Welcome to the Sleepless Historian. If you find calm in gentle stories, please consider liking and subscribing. And remember, you can turn on loop, allowing this soothing journey to repeat. Now, let us settle into a cozy scene. Dim the lights. Take a moment to adjust your pillow, perhaps wrap yourself in a soft blanket. Let your breathing slow, inhaling deeply and exhaling gently. Allow your shoulders to relax, releasing any tension. Can Oishi. Today, we will embark on an exploration that may seem, at first glance, exceedingly mundane. We will delve into the exceedingly unexciting history of Roman road signage approval procedures. A topic that may not stir the heart, but offers a wealth of gentle details. This is a world where meticulous care ensured that travelers knew not to turn left at the Colosseum, among other life-altering directions. Oh, imagine Rome, with its bustling streets and grand architecture. The thoroughfares, lined with stones worn smooth by centuries of passage, were not just routes between destinations. They were pathways of communication, where every sign held purpose and significance. Every inscription was the result of careful deliberation, a process that unfolded slowly and methodically. Oh, ahas. We will explore the specific routines involved in approving these signs, the measurements taken to ensure visibility, and the etiquette followed by those who crafted these messages. Picture the scribes, seated at their desks, quills in hand, poring over scrolls filled with regulations. Each detail examined, each phrase chosen with precision. Little by little, we will uncover how the Romans took care to guide their citizens and visitors. The importance of a clear direction, the need for consistency in wording, and the role of local officials in this process. So, breathe slowly and gently allow yourself to drift into this world of methodical governance. Let the details wash over you as we explore a topic that may seem dull, but is filled with a quiet rhythm of history. As we delve deeper into the world of Roman road signage approval procedures, let us take a moment to envision the tools and materials that were essential for this meticulous process. Imagine a humble workspace, filled with simple yet effective instruments. The quills, crafted from the feathers of geese or other birds, lay ready for use. The ink, a rich blend of soot and water mixed with gum, would flow smoothly onto the papyrus or parchment. The scrolls would be carefully stored in wooden boxes, lined with soft cloth to protect them from dust and moisture. Each scroll, unrolled, would reveal a carefully inscribed account of regulations and guidelines. The measurements of the signs were precise, often dictated by local customs or the preferences of the city's officials. A typical sign might measure around 3 feet by 2 feet, crafted from durable materials such as stone or wood to withstand the elements and the passage of time. The inscriptions themselves were crafted with care. Lettering styles varied, but the most common was the Roman square capitals, known for their clarity and elegance. Each letter was formed steadily, with attention paid to spacing and alignment. The scribe would often use a ruler to create straight lines and maintain uniformity in the height of the letters. This was not just a matter of aesthetics. Readability was paramount. A sign that could not be easily read could lead to confusion, and clarity was essential for the orderly flow of traffic. Now, take a deep breath and imagine the scribe seated comfortably, his shoulders relaxed. He would begin his work early in the morning, when the light was soft and the city still stirred from slumber. Each day, he would review requests for new signs or revisions. The approval process was not swift. It unfolded over days and sometimes weeks. Local officials, perhaps a council of elders or appointed magistrates, would gather to discuss the proposals. They would meet in a shaded courtyard, perhaps under the dappled light of a leafy tree. These discussions would be slow and deliberate, with each member taking time to voice their thoughts. Notes would be taken, and decisions made only after careful consideration. The process was a reflection of their values. Each sign represented not just a direction, but a commitment to the community. Once approved, the sign would then be crafted. A local artisan, skilled in the art of stone carving or woodworking, would be commissioned. The cost of materials varied, but typically a wooden sign might cost around 5 denarii, while a stone sign, more durable and lasting, could be as much as 20 denarii. This was a significant sum, and thus, great care was taken to ensure that every expense was justified. Slowly and gently, the artisan would begin his work. For a wooden sign, he would select a piece of timber, perhaps oak or cedar, known for its strength and resistance to decay. The wood would be planed smooth, and the artisan would measure carefully, ensuring that the dimensions matched the specifications laid out in the approved document. For stone signs, the process was even more labor-intensive. The artisan would choose a slab of limestone, its surface even and unblemished. Using chisels of varying sizes, he would begin to carve the letters, each stroke deliberate and thoughtful. This process could take days, as the artisan worked meticulously to achieve the desired depth and clarity. Once complete, the sign would be transported to its designated location. A team of laborers, strong and reliable, would carry it with care. They would often use a simple cart to move larger signs, ensuring that they were secure to prevent damage during transit. The journey through the bustling streets of Rome would require patience. As they navigated the crowds and carts, they would call out gently to clear a path. Upon arrival, the placement of the sign was of utmost importance. Officials would gather once more, discussing the optimal height and angle for visibility. The ideal position would be at eye level for most passers-by, ensuring that it could be easily read without straining. A sign placed too high could go unnoticed, while one too low might be obstructed by the bustle of daily life. The installation process was methodical. For wooden signs, holes would be drilled into sturdy posts, often made from the same timber as the sign itself. The posts would be sunk into the ground, securely anchored to withstand the wind and rain. For stone signs, a deeper foundation was necessary. The artisans would dig a hole, filling it with a mixture of gravel and sand to create a stable base. Slowly, they would place the stone, ensuring that it was level before securing it in place. Every detail mattered. The artisans would step back to assess the sign from various angles, ensuring that it could be easily seen by all who approached. The final touch was the application of a protective coat of oil or wax, preserving the inscription and enhancing its visibility. Breathe gently, and imagine this scene unfolding before you. The laborers, the artisans, and the officials, all working in harmony to create something simple yet essential. The signs were not merely directions. They were symbols of order, guiding the flow of life in the city. Once installed, the signs would be maintained regularly. Local officials had the responsibility to ensure that every sign remained legible and intact. Routine inspections were conducted, perhaps monthly or seasonally, where officials would walk the streets, checking for wear and tear. A sign that had faded or been damaged would require attention. Easy hey. If repairs were needed, the same artisan might be called upon, or a new craftsman would be commissioned. The process of approval for a repair was usually less formal, often requiring only a brief consultation with local officials. The urgency of maintaining clear communication was understood by all. As the days turned into weeks and seasons shifted, the signs weathered the elements, telling quiet tales of the lives that passed by. Little by little, they became part of the city's fabric, a comforting presence in an ever-changing landscape. So, as you settle deeper into relaxation, allow yourself to absorb these serene details. The careful decisions made, the steady hands that crafted each sign, and the gentle rhythm of life that followed the guidance they provide. The approval process, though unexciting, was a vital thread in the tapestry of Roman life. And in this world, where even the simplest tasks held significance, we find a soothing reminder of the care taken to ensure that no one would turn left at the Colosseum by mistake. In this gentle exploration, we turn our attention to the tools and materials employed in the creation of Roman road, signage. Each element played a significant role in ensuring that the signs would withstand the test of time, while also conveying clear messages to the citizens and travelers within the empire. Hey. The artisans who crafted these signs often began with local materials, a choice both practical and economical. Limestone or clay might be selected, depending on the region. Limestone, with its sturdy composition, was favored for its durability. Clay, on the other hand, allowed for intricate designs and was often used for temporary signs. For inscriptions, the artisans relied on a variety of tools. A chisel with a fine tip would be used to carve letters into the stone, while a more robust hammer would help shape the larger blocks. The artisans would work with great care, ensuring that each letter was clear and legible. They often measured the dimensions of the signs meticulously, creating a standard size of approximately 3 feet in height and 2 feet in width. This uniformity facilitated recognition, allowing people to quickly identify the signs as they traveled. When once the materials were chosen and the tools prepared, the artisans would begin the laborious process of crafting the signs. This could take several days, depending on the intricacy of the design and the size of the sign. The chiseling of letters required not only skill, but also patience. Each stroke needed to be deliberate, for any mistake could lead to confusion. And then, once the sign was completed, it would be left to dry or cure, particularly in the case of clay. This could take anywhere from a few days to several weeks, depending on the climate. In warmer months, the sun would aid the drying process, while in cooler seasons, the artisans would often store their creations in a sheltered area, perhaps under a simple wooden awning. As the signs cured, the artisans would prepare for the next phase, painting. They used natural pigments derived from minerals and plants. The colors were chosen carefully, with vivid hues such as red and yellow, often employed to catch the eye. The artisans would mix these pigments with a binding agent, often derived from animal fat, to create a lasting paint. The application of paint was an art in itself. Using fine brushes fashioned from animal hair, the artisans would meticulously fill in the carved letters. This process required a steady hand, as any slip could mar the clarity of the message. Slowly, and gently. They would bring the characters to life, ensuring that each sign was not only functional, but also aesthetically pleasing. Upon completion, the signs would be inspected. Local officials would often be summoned to assess the work. They would check for clarity in the message, ensuring that it aligned with the established guidelines. A sign that miscommunicated a direction or message could lead to confusion, and thus approval was paramount. Yeah, sure. For the approval process, the officials would typically meet in a designated area, perhaps a local forum or a quiet alcove. This gathering might take place weekly, allowing for the review of multiple signs at once. The officials, often dressed in togas, would discuss the merits of each sign, taking into consideration the craftsmanship, legibility, and placement. Once approved, the signs would be prepared for installation. They were transported to their destined locations with great care. This could involve a simple cart pulled by oxen, or in some cases a team of workers carrying the signs by hand. The journey to the designated spot could be short or long, depending on the distance from the workshop. Upon arrival, the installation would begin. The artisans would dig a shallow trench, typically around 1 foot deep, to secure the base of the sign. This process was methodical and required precise measurements to ensure the sign stood upright. The signs would be placed firmly into the ground, with the top of the sign reaching approximately 5 feet above the pathway. And then, little by little, the artisans would backfill around the base with soil, tamping it down to secure the sign in place. Once the installation was complete, the officials would once again be called to inspect the work. They would ensure that the sign was positioned correctly, visible to all who approached. The cost of these signs vary depending on the materials used and the complexity of the design. A simple clay sign might cost only a few denarii, while a large limestone sign with intricate carvings could be much more expensive. The payment was often made in installments, reflecting the ongoing relationship between the artisans and the local government. Following installation, a period of observation would commence. Local officials would walk the streets, observing how the signs interacted with daily life. They would note if adjustments were necessary, perhaps in the case that a sign was obscured by foliage, or if the wording became unclear due to weathering. The process of evaluating the effectiveness of the signage was ongoing. Officials would often meet quarterly to discuss any needed changes or replacements. This allowed for a steady flow of communication between the artisans and the local government. In moments of repair, the steps would mirror those of the initial crafting. A damaged sign would be carefully removed, often requiring the same gentle excavation process to ensure that no further damage was done. The artisan would then assess the extent of the wear. Mark them out. For repairs, the cost would usually be lower than that of a new sign, as the original materials could often be reused. The artisans would carefully clean the surface, removing any debris or faded paint, preparing it for a rejuvenation of the message. Once again, the artisan would engage in the delicate process of chiseling and painting. This familiar rhythm would return as the artisan sought to restore the sign to its former glory. Each repair was treated with the same respect as the original creation, for clarity and communication remained paramount. Through all these processes, the signs became more than mere markers. They evolved into symbols of community and order. They guided travelers, allowing them to navigate the bustling streets of Rome with ease. The memory of how to avoid turning left at the Colosseum became a simple but vital piece of knowledge, woven into the very fabric of daily life. So, as you relax further, Envision the artisans at work, the rhythmic sounds of chiseling echoing softly in the background. Picture the streets of Rome, lined with these guiding signs, each one a testament to the care and consideration taken by those who shaped their world. Allow these thoughts to wash over you slowly and gently as you drift into a peaceful slumber. That's funny. Well, as we continue to explore the world of Roman road signage, let us delve into the tools and materials used by the artisans who created these important markers. Their workspace was often modest, yet filled with the essentials for crafting signs that would endure the test of time. The artisan would typically possess a wooden toolkit, well worn from years of use. Within this toolkit lay chisels of various sizes, each one carefully selected for its specific purpose. The larger chisels would clear the rough outline of the letters, while the finer chisels would add delicate details and flourish. Each stroke was measured and deliberate, taking time to ensure clarity and precision. Alongside the chisels, the artisans would use a wooden mallet, its surface smooth from countless strikes. This mallet was essential, providing the needed force to drive the chisels into the stone. With each tap, the artisans would listen intently, gauging the sound to know how deep the chisel had cut into the material. There was a rhythm to this process, a gentle ebb and flow that mirrored the artisan's own breath. The materials chosen for these signs were often local stone, readily available in the surrounding areas. Marble, limestone, and even clay were common choices. Each material brought its own character, influencing the final appearance of the sign. The artisans would select the stone with care, looking for a surface that was both durable and aesthetically pleasing. Once the stone was chosen, the next step involved measuring the dimensions of the sign. The artisans would employ simple tools, such as measuring sticks and string, to ensure that the proportions were just right. Typically, a sign would measure around 1 meter in height and half a meter in width, allowing for easy visibility from a distance. So, once the stone was prepared and measured, the artisans would outline the letters using a charcoal stick. This preliminary sketch was crucial, as it established the placement and size of each letter. The artisans would often step back, eyeing the outline to ensure balance and symmetry. After a final inspection, the chiseling would begin. This chiseling process was meticulous and time-consuming. It could take several hours to carve even a single sign, depending on the complexity of the design. The artisans often worked in shifts, allowing each other to take breaks. A gentle camaraderie developed amongst them as they shared tips and techniques, encouraging each other to maintain the highest standards of craftsmanship. After the letters had been carved, the artisans would move on to the painting stage. A mixture of natural pigments and binders was created to achieve vibrant colors that would last against the elements. The artisans preferred earth tones, derived from minerals and plants, ensuring the colors remained true over time. Using brushes made from animal hair, the artisans would apply the paint with great care. Each stroke was deliberate, as they filled in the letters, ensuring no area was left untouched. This layering process could take several days, as the paint had to dry completely between applications. Gradually, the letters would come to life, standing out against the stone with clarity and vibrancy. Once the painting was complete, the signs required a final touch. A protective layer was applied, often made from natural oils or waxes. This was essential, as it helped to shield the signs from rain, sun, and wear. The artisans would take pride in this final step, knowing that it preserved their work for years to come. As the signs were finished, the artisans would carefully store them. Often, they would place the completed signs in a shaded area, away from direct sunlight, ensuring the paint would not fade prematurely. The signs would be stacked neatly, each one waiting patiently for its journey to the designated location. And transporting the signs to their final destinations was an essential part of the process. The artisans would load the signs onto carts, using straw for cushioning to prevent any damage during transit. This procedure required careful planning, as the weight of the stone could make the carts difficult to maneuver. Once at the location, the artisans would work together to position the signs. They would consult with local officials to ensure each sign was placed correctly, following established guidelines for visibility and accessibility. The process was methodical, with each sign being positioned at an angle that would maximize its readability from the road. The placement of the signs was often a communal event. Townspeople would gather to witness the installation, a gentle buzz of excitement filling the air. Yet, the atmosphere remained calm as the artisans moved slowly and deliberately. Each sign was anchored firmly into the ground, often using a mixture of gravel and clay to ensure stability. The approval procedures for these signs were equally meticulous. Local officials, often appointed by the city, would assess each sign for both aesthetic and functional quality. They would examine the craftsmanship, ensuring the letters were clear and well-formed. This process could take days, but the artisans remained patient, understanding the importance of these checks. Once a sign was approved, it would be marked with a small symbol, a simple dot or line, indicating its official status. This detail was crucial, as it reflected the community's commitment to safety and order. As you imagine these scenes, think about the artisans, the tools they used, and the careful attention to detail that went into each sign. Picture the way they interacted with one another, their movements slow and deliberate, embodying the very essence of craftsmanship. Allow these thoughts to envelop you as you breathe deeply and slowly and gently, letting go of any tension. The process of creating and installing these signs was not merely a task, but a shared experience, promoting a sense of unity within the community. The knowledge that these signs would guide travelers, helping them navigate the streets safely and efficiently, fostered a feeling of pride among the artisans. So, as you settle further into your rest, let the imagery of these artisans at work linger in your mind. Allow their rhythmic chiseling, the soft whispers of paint being applied, and the careful placement of each sign to create a soothing atmosphere. Each detail, each routine builds a tapestry of tranquility, inviting you to drift deeper into relaxation. As we delve deeper into the procedures surrounding Roman road signage, let us explore the intricate details of materials and tools employed in this essential task. Picture a small workshop, filled with the gentle hum of creativity. The artisans, skilled in their craft, carefully select their materials. The primary choice was a durable stone, often limestone or marble, chosen for its resilience against the elements. These stones were quarried from nearby regions, transported with great care, and stored in shaded areas to prevent any degradation from the sun. The artisans would gather the stones, measuring them with precision. A common size for a sign might be around 3 feet in width and 2 feet in height, large enough to be seen from a distance but manageable for transport and installation. They would use tools such as chisels, made from iron, with handles crafted from wood for comfort. The chisels allowed them to carve letters and symbols into the stone. Each letter was carefully measured to ensure uniformity, a height of about 6 inches for the letters, allowing for visibility from afar. Once the stone was prepared, the artisans would mix a simple yet effective paint made from natural pigments. These pigments were derived from minerals and plants, ground into fine powders, and mixed with a binding agent like egg white or water. The colors were chosen purposefully: white for clarity, red for caution, and blue for information. The artisans would then apply this paint using soft brushes made from animal hair, allowing for smooth strokes that brought the letters to life. As they painted, they adhered to a particular etiquette. Silence reigned in the workshop, with only the sound of brushes meeting stone and the occasional soft murmur of encouragement. Each artisan knew their part in the process, understanding that every detail mattered. The painters would often work in tandem with the carvers, moving between tasks as needed. This collaboration created a rhythm, a gentle ebb and flow, reinforcing their shared purpose. Once the painting was complete, the signs would be allowed to dry for a day or two, ensuring that the pigments set properly. During this time, the artisans would clean their tools, carefully rinsing the brushes and chisels in water. They understood the importance of maintaining their equipment, as clean tools contributed to the quality of their work. This step was not merely a chore, but a moment of reflection, allowing them to appreciate the craft and the community they served. When the signs were ready for installation, a meticulous schedule was in place. The local magistrate would often oversee this process, ensuring everything adhered to established guidelines. Each sign's location was determined not by whim, but by careful consideration of traffic flow and visibility. Signs indicating directions, warnings, or distances were placed at predetermined intervals, typically every quarter mile along the roads. This consistency allowed travelers to orient themselves easily, even in unfamiliar territory. The installation team, consisting of several skilled workers, would gather early in the morning. They would carry the signs using sturdy wooden beams called litters. These litters were designed for balance, with ropes to secure the stones in place as they moved. The journey to the installation site was deliberate, with the team navigating carefully to avoid any damage to the fragile painted surfaces. They would stop periodically to rest, ensuring everyone remained comfortable and safe. Upon arrival, the team would survey the area, making sure the placement of the sign would not obstruct the view of other important markers. The artisans would then dig a hole, approximately 2 feet deep, to secure the sign firmly in the ground. This process was conducted with great care, as the stability of the sign was paramount for its longevity. Once the hole was prepared, they would place the sign upright, ensuring it stood straight and true. With the sign in position, the team would fill the hole with gravel and soil, gently pressing down to secure the base. This too was a ritual of sorts, as each worker took turns adding material, creating a sense of shared accomplishment. They would step back, allowing the sign to settle into its new home, a small but significant addition to the landscape. After installation, the artisans would often gather to examine their work, taking pride in what they had created together. Each sign held not just information, but a piece of their collective spirit. They would discuss any potential improvements for future projects, sharing ideas in the same calm manner that characterized their work. This camaraderie was an essential aspect of their craft, fostering a supportive environment that echoed through the quiet streets. The completion of a sign meant more than just physical installation. It signified a commitment to the safety and navigation of the community. The placement of each sign was usually celebrated with a small gathering, where artisans, local officials, and residents would come together. This event was low-key, often featuring simple refreshments, They would share stories of their journeys and experiences on the roads, reinforcing the bond between the creators and the community. Oh, AC, Inche, AC. As the sun set, casting a warm light on the newly installed signage, the artisans would remember that their work would serve travelers for years to come. They understood the significance of clear directions, allowing people to navigate with confidence and ease. Each sign stood as a testament to their dedication, a guiding light in the dark. Fine. Now, as you imagine this tranquil scene, picture the artisans returning to their workshop, their minds at ease, knowing they have contributed to something greater than themselves. Let this image wash over you as you breathe slowly and deeply, and gently, allowing your shoulders to relax and your body to settle into comfort. In the days that followed, the signs would undergo a process of observation. Local officials would periodically check the signs for clarity and stability. They understood the importance of maintenance in ensuring that these markers remained effective. If a sign became worn or damaged, it would be noted and scheduled for repair. This step, while mundane, was essential. It reflected the community's ongoing commitment to safety and order, ensuring that travelers could always rely on clear guidance. Ow. Ali. The repairs were often simple affairs. A fresh coat of paint would be applied, or a chipped corner of stone might be smoothed. The artisans would gather once more, bringing with them the same tools and pigments. They would work in harmony, restoring each sign to its former glory, ensuring that the message remained clear. This cycle of creation, installation, and maintenance wove a steady rhythm into the fabric of daily life. It was a quiet dance, one that allowed artisans to find peace in their work. They took solace in knowing that their efforts contributed to the well-being of travelers passing through their towns. As you reflect on these routines, allow the soothing cadence of the artisan's tasks to lull you deeper into relaxation. Each detail matters. Each breath brings comfort, slowly and gently. A mile. As the artisans gathered for their maintenance tasks, the first step in the process involved selecting the right tools for their work. A simple wooden box, worn from years of use, held a variety of instruments. Within this box lay brushes of different sizes, each bristle soft and delicate, suited for the gentle strokes required to restore the faded paint upon the signs. There were small chisels, their edges finely honed, ready to smooth rough patches on the stone. The artisans approached their tasks with care, for each tool had its purpose, and each purpose was deeply rooted in the history of their craft. In addition to the tools, the artisans needed to gather materials that would aid in their task. They would often procure natural pigments from local sources. These pigments, derived from minerals and plants, were ground into fine powders. The color palette was carefully chosen. Earthy tones of ochre and umber, vibrant reds and soft greens, all selected for their durability and visibility. Each artisan would mix a small quantity of pigment with a binding agent, often a simple mixture of water and natural glue, to create a paint that would withstand the elements. This mix, creamy and smooth, allowed for precise application, ensuring that the messages would remain clear for travelers. The artisans were diligent in their measurements. A small scale would often be used to ensure the perfect balance of pigment to binder, allowing for consistency in their work. They understood that a well-prepared paint could mean the difference between a sign that faded after a season and one that remained bright for many years. Each artisan took pride in their ability to mix exactly what was needed, honing their skills over countless repetitions. As the preparations continued, the artisans also took time to consider the placement of their signs. They would consult maps, meticulously drawn on parchment, to determine the most effective locations. Each sign was a beacon of guidance, and its position mattered greatly. Some signs warned of upcoming turns, while others indicated distances to important landmarks. Careful thought was given to where the sun would shine and how shadows might fall, for clarity was paramount. Nelly. Once the materials were ready, the artisans would gather at the site of the sign in need of maintenance. They would set down their tools and materials in a neat and orderly fashion. Each artisan had their designated space. This organization allowed for a smooth workflow, where everyone knew their role. It was a shared understanding, a silent agreement that made the process efficient. The first step in the restoration involved a thorough cleaning of the sign surface. Using soft cloths soaked in water, they would gently wipe away dust, bird droppings, and any other debris that had accumulated. This cleaning ritual was crucial. If the surface was not prepared, the paint would not adhere properly. They worked in unison, each artisan immersed in their task, the gentle sounds of cloth on stone a soothing background. Once cleaned, the artisans would inspect the sign closely. They would look for cracks or chips that needed attention. If any imperfections were found, small chisels would be employed to carefully carve away any jagged edges. This process required patience and a steady hand, as even the smallest miscalculation could alter the integrity of the sign. A keen eye, honed over years of practice, ensured that every detail was attended to. Oh. After the surface was prepared, the artisans would begin the painting process. They would choose their brushes with care, selecting the right size for the task at hand. A larger brush would be used for backgrounds, while smaller brushes would handle the delicate lettering. The artisans dipped their brushes into the freshly mixed paint and began to apply it with a gentle touch. Each stroke was deliberate, rhythmic, and soothing. They would layer the paint slowly, allowing each coat to dry before applying another. This layering process not only enhanced the vibrancy of the colors, but also ensured longevity against the elements. Throughout this process, the artisans would communicate softly with one another, sharing tips and encouragement. They understood the importance of collaboration, as each sign was a collective effort. Their voices, calm and steady, blended with the sounds of brushes on stone, creating a harmony that resonated with the essence of their work. As the day progressed, they would take breaks, stepping back to admire their work. They would often sit on the ground, sharing simple meals prepared earlier. A loaf of bread, some cheese, perhaps a few olives, all enjoyed in the company of one another. This pause allowed them to recharge and reflect on the significance of their labor. They would talk about the travelers they hoped would benefit from their signs, imagining the relief and comfort a well-placed marker could provide. Yes. Once the paint had dried and the repairs were complete, the artisans would gather their tools, cleaning them meticulously after each use. Brushes would be rinsed in water and laid out to dry. The chisels would be wiped down and returned to their wooden box, each one requiring care to maintain its edge. This attention to detail in cleaning was a mark of respect for their tools, as well as a commitment to their craft. Before leaving the site, the artisans would stand together, admiring their completed work. They would take a moment to ensure that everything was in order, that the sign was straight and the lettering clear. They would step back, allowing their eyes to take in the entirety of the sign, ensuring that it stood as a guiding light for all who would pass. This final assessment was a ritual of closure, a moment of satisfaction before they returned to their daily lives. As you envision this gentle process of craftsmanship, allow the steady rhythm of their work to envelop you. Each brushstroke, each careful measurement, each shared meal, all woven together in a tapestry of dedication and care. It was a simple life, yet filled with purpose. Each moment spent in service of those who traveled, offering direction, safety, and comfort. And gently, consider how these small acts of creation and care can bring peace to the world around you. Let your mind drift softly, as the artisans of old found solace in their work. May you find rest in the quiet of this moment. Now, as the artisans prepared to leave, they gathered their tools with care and intention. Each tool had its designated place, a methodical organization that spoke to the artisans' respect for their craft. The brushes, a variety of sizes, were stored in a soft leather pouch, each brush carefully cleaned of paint residue after use. The brush bristles were always left to dry in a cool, shaded area, ensuring their longevity. The artisans understood that a well-cared-for tool would perform better, allowing them to execute their delicate tasks with precision. The chisels, crafted from hardened steel, were placed in a wooden box lined with felt. The box, meticulously crafted by a fellow artisan, protected the edges of the chisels from dulling. Each chisel was labeled according to its size and shape, from the smallest detailing chisel to the larger, broader options used for shaping stone. The artisans maintained an inventory list, detailing the condition of each tool, ensuring that replacements would be made well in advance. This careful tracking allowed for seamless continuity in their work. Next, the artisans would gather the pigments they had carefully mixed for the sign. They used earth tones derived from natural minerals. Ochre, sienna, and umber were stored in small clay containers, each labeled with its name. The artisans would take a moment to appreciate the colors, reflective of the materials sourced from the land. These colors would not fade easily, thanks to the precise mixing techniques employed, ensuring that the signs remained vibrant for years to come. The containers were sealed tightly, preventing moisture from altering the pigment's integrity. The parchment used for drafting the initial designs was another element of their process. This parchment, made from the skins of animals, was durable yet flexible. The artisans would roll the parchment carefully, storing it in a wooden tube lined with cloth. This practice protected their designs from water and dust, preserving their artistic visions until they were ready to be brought to life. Each tube was labeled with the date of creation, allowing for easy reference when the time came for a new sign. In addition to their tools and materials, the artisans also had a schedule they diligently followed. They met at dawn, when the light was soft and the air crisp. This was the time they found clarity and focus. In the early hours, they would gather in a circle, sharing a simple breakfast of bread and olives. This ritual, shared among friends, fostered a sense of community. It was during these mornings that they would discuss their upcoming projects, ensuring everyone was aligned in their tasks for the day. After breakfast, they would move to the site where the sign was to be created. The distance was often short, but they would walk together, sharing stories and laughter. The camaraderie built during this journey was essential, as it reinforced their dedication to one another and to their craft. Each step taken on the cobblestone streets echoed the history of their city, a reminder of the roads they were helping to shape. Upon arriving at the site, The artisans would outline their work area. They would clear away any debris, creating a clean space for their activities. This act of preparation was almost ceremonial. They would then set up a central point for mixing pigments, surrounded by their tools and materials. Mixing pigments required patience and precision. They would take their time, slowly and gently combining the powders with water. The consistency had to be just right, neither too thick nor too runny, allowing for smooth application onto the stone. Once the pigments were prepared, they would begin the process of sketching the design onto the stone surface. Using a charcoal stick, each artisan would take turns transferring their ideas onto the stone, ensuring that the dimensions were accurate. They measured carefully using a simple wooden ruler, marked in increments of a thumb's width. The act of measuring was methodical, ensuring that the letters would be evenly spaced. As the design began to take shape, the artisans would pause frequently, stepping back to assess their work from a distance. This practice helped them maintain perspective, ensuring the proportions were harmonious. They would take deep breaths, allowing their minds to reset, allowing creativity to flow. Slowly and gently, they would return to their work, adjusting lines here and there, ensuring every detail was just as it should be. Once the design was finalized, they would begin the painting process. The artisans would layer the paint carefully, allowing one coat to dry before applying the next. They used soft strokes, letting the brush glide over the stone surface, almost like a whisper. This gentle motion created a soothing rhythm, allowing the artisans to lose themselves in the task at hand. Each stroke was deliberate, each color chosen with care. The artisans also understood the importance of communication during this process. They would often speak softly, discussing the next steps, sharing insights about the pigments or offering encouragement. This soft exchange of ideas helped to build trust among the group, fostering a sense of harmony. The sound of their voices, like a gentle breeze, filled the air, creating an atmosphere of calm and focus. Days would flow gently as the artisans worked together, each contributing their skills to the collective effort. They would break for lunch, sharing simple meals prepared at home. These meals included lentils, bread, and seasonal vegetables, enjoyed in the shade of a tree or beside a gentle stream. They understood that nourishment was vital, replenishing their energy for the tasks ahead. The act of eating together was another ritual, reinforcing the bonds of friendship. As the days turned into weeks, the artisans would complete the signs, each one a testament to their dedication and meticulousness. They would stand in front of their finished work, often feeling a sense of pride. The signs were not merely markers, they were symbols of guidance, a promise to the travelers who would rely on their clarity. The process of creating a sign was not hurried. It was a labor of love, unfolding slowly, little by little. The artisans knew that good work took time. They understood that each moment spent on their craft was a moment invested in community, in safety, and in connection. And so, as the sun would set, painting the sky with soft hues, they would gather their tools once more, ensuring everything was in order, ready for the next day's work. They would leave the site knowing that they had contributed something meaningful to the world, a small part of the greater tapestry of their city, guiding all who walked its paths. The following day would begin early, at dawn, when the first light would gently filter through the trees, casting soft shadows upon the ground. The artisans would rise, stretching their limbs slowly, taking a moment to breathe in the crisp morning air. They would gather their tools, arranged methodically in their designated storage area. Each tool had its place, A small wooden chest filled with chisels, hammers, and brushes, each tool carefully maintained and cleaned after each use. Alfie. Nayawun Su. The chisels, crafted from durable iron, came in various sizes. The smallest chisels, thin and precise, were used for delicate details, while the larger ones, robust and sturdy, were reserved for broader strokes on the signboards. They would consider the dimensions of each sign, typically measuring around 4 feet in length and 2 feet in width. This size allowed for ample space to inscribe the necessary information without overwhelming the viewer. Oh, Anbai, Andawasati. The artisans would select the signboards from a stockpile of cedar wood, known for its ability to resist rot and weathering. The wood was often sourced from nearby forests, ensuring a connection to the land and the community. Each board would be sanded down to a smooth finish, providing a gentle texture that would feel pleasing to the touch. This careful preparation was crucial, as it ensured that the paint would adhere properly, creating vibrant, lasting colors that would guide travelers for years to come. Now, as the sun ascended higher into the sky, the artisans would measure out the exact spacing for the letters, using a simple yet effective system of string and chalk to create their guidelines. The string would be stretched taut across the board, giving them a straight edge to follow. They would take their time with this step, drawing each letter with care, ensuring uniformity. The letters would typically be around 6 inches tall, providing clarity from a distance. When it came time to paint, the artisans would mix natural pigments, carefully combining materials like ochre and charcoal to create rich, earthy tones. They would use brushes made from animal hair, each stroke a gentle caress against the wood. The paint would dry slowly under the warm sun, the scent of fresh wood and paint mingling in the air, a comforting reminder of their craft. Besim Sen. Once the paint was dry, the artisans would apply a protective varnish made from local resins mixed with oils. This varnish would guard against the elements, ensuring that the signs remained visible and vibrant, even through the harshest of winters. This final touch took time as they waited patiently for the layers to cure, allowing the natural beauty of the wood to shine through. The approval process for each sign was another meticulous step in their journey. The artisans understood the importance of adhering to the standards set forth by the local governing council. They would prepare a simple report detailing the materials used, the dimensions of the sign, and the proposed location. This document would be presented to the council, a group of elder citizens, respected for their wisdom and experience. The council would convene once a week, in a quiet room adorned with maps and charts of the city. The artisans would sit, waiting patiently for their turn to present. They would breathe deeply, finding calm in the ritual of it all. When called upon, they would explain their design softly, articulating the thought that had gone into each letter, each color, and each placement. The elders would nod, taking notes on parchment, their quills scratching softly against the surface. Wow. After the presentation, the artisans would have to wait for the council's decision, which could take several days. During this time, they would continue to work on new signs, their hands busy and their minds calm. They understood that patience was a virtue, a lesson woven into the fabric of their daily lives. Once the council had reviewed their proposals, they would send a messenger to deliver the decision. A simple note would arrive, stating whether the sign was approved or if modifications were necessary. If changes were required, the artisans would receive constructive feedback, guiding them toward a solution that would better serve the community. The repetition of this process was soothing, a reminder of the importance of collaboration and communication. The artisans would then store the approved signs in a designated area, a small shed that provided shelter from the elements. Inside, the signs would lean gently against the walls, waiting patiently for their installation. The artisans would often visit this space, running their fingers along the edges of the signs, imagining the journeys they would undertake. Aye. On installation day, the artisans would rise early once more, bringing with them a selection of tools for the task ahead. They would carry sturdy wooden posts, measuring around 6 feet in height, designed to support the signs firmly. These posts would be crafted from the same cedar wood, ensuring harmony in aesthetics. The location for each sign had been carefully selected, often at intersections or near significant landmarks. They would measure the exact distance from the road, ensuring visibility for oncoming travelers. A sense of pride would fill their hearts as they envisioned travelers relying on their signs for guidance. With each post, they would dig a hole approximately 2 feet deep, using a spade to create a firm base. The earth would be cool and damp, a reminder of the life beneath the surface. The artisans would set the posts firmly in place, pouring gravel around the base to secure them. They would step back, ensuring everything was level and straight, their eyes scanning the horizon for any potential obstructions. Rowan. Hey. Once the posts were in place, they would carefully attach the signs, using wrought iron brackets to hold them securely. Each screw would be tightened gently, ensuring that the signs would withstand the test of time. The artisans would take a moment to step back, admiring their work. As they finished, they would often leave an offering, a small token of gratitude for the earth that supported their endeavors. This act of reverence, simple yet profound, connected them to the land and the community they served. They understood that their work was not only about signs, it was about fostering a sense of safety and direction. Yeah, could be must. The sounds of the city would begin to stir around them, the gentle hum of life awakening. The artisans would stand quietly for a moment, allowing themselves to breathe in the essence of the place they had contributed to. They would pause to reflect on the journey of creation, from the forest to the roadside, each sign a testament to their dedication. They had not merely erected signs, they had woven a part of themselves into the tapestry of their city. And so, as the day unfolded, they would find comfort in the knowledge that their efforts would serve many. They had played a role in guiding travelers, in ensuring that no one would turn left at the Colosseum in confusion. Little by little, they had created a world of clarity in an often chaotic landscape. It was a quiet accomplishment, but one that would echo through the ages, a gentle reminder that sometimes the most mundane tasks carry the greatest significance. As the sun dipped lower in the Roman sky, the artisans prepared their tools for the evening's work. Each tool had its designated place. A soft leather pouch held chisels made of tempered bronze, their edges smooth from years of use. The artisans would take great care in selecting each tool, ensuring that it was perfectly suited for the task ahead. They would often run their fingers over the cool metal, feeling the weight, the balance, and the promise of the craftsmanship that lay ahead. The wood they chose for the signs was typically cedar, known for its durability and resistance to decay. The artisans would measure the planks with a gentle touch, using a simple rope stretched between two markers, ensuring each piece was precisely the same length. Often they would cut the wood into rectangles measuring approximately 2 feet in height and 3 feet in width. Each sign would require a careful hand to etch the letters, the artisans drawing the letters slowly, deliberately, with a steady hand. Nyan Bi. When it came time to paint, they would mix natural pigments with linseed oil, creating a smooth texture that would adhere well to the wood. The colors were chosen with care, often a deep ochre or a soft white, contrasting beautifully against the natural wood grain. They would apply the paint using a broad, flat brush, sweeping it across the surface with even strokes. Little by little, the letters would emerge, taking form under the watchful eyes of the artisans. The process of painting was not rushed. Each stroke was a meditation, a rhythmic movement that echoed the heartbeat of the city. The artisans would stand back occasionally to admire their work, ensuring that each sign was as legible as it was beautiful. They would then leave the signs to dry, placing them gently against the warm stones of their workshop, allowing the scents of wood and paint to mingle in the air. Once dried, the signs would be coated with a thin layer of beeswax, which offered a soft sheen and protection against the elements. This task required patience, as they would apply the wax in small circular motions, allowing it to soak into the wood. After this step, the artisans would carefully polish each sign with a soft cloth. The cloth itself a treasured piece of fabric, often passed down through generations. The artisans understood the importance of communication in their craft. They would often gather in the evening, discussing the layout of the signs, the spacing between letters, and the positioning along the roads. It was essential that each sign was not only informative, but also aesthetically pleasing. They would make notes in soft leather-bound books, sketching designs, and jotting down measurements for future reference. These records became a part of their legacy, a way to ensure that their methods would be preserved for future artisans. Once the signs were completed, the process of installation began. The artisans would make their way to the chosen locations, often accompanied by the simple sound of wooden carts rolling over cobblestones. They would carry with them sturdy wooden posts, each cut to a height of approximately 5 feet. These posts were often made from the same cedar used for the signs, ensuring a cohesive look. Arriving at the site, the artisans would first survey the area, ensuring that the signs would be placed where they would be most beneficial. They would measure the distance from the edge of the road, making sure that each sign was positioned at least 3 feet away from the passing traffic. This attention to detail was a critical part of their responsibility to the public. Using a simple spade, they would dig holes in the earth, approximately 2 feet deep. The earth would be cool and damp, a reminder of the seasons that passed. They would carefully place the posts into the holes, ensuring that they stood straight and true. This process required teamwork. One artisan would hold the post in place, while another filled the hole with soil. Little by little, they would tamp down the earth around the base, securing it in place, ensuring it would withstand the tests of time and weather. Phew, After the posts were set, the signs would be fastened using bronze nails, each carefully hammered into place with gentle taps. The sound of metal meeting wood was a satisfying rhythm, echoing through the quiet streets. The artisans would step back, admiring their handiwork, the signs now standing tall against the backdrop of the city. It was essential that these installations follow a specific protocol. Each sign had to be placed in a way that was easily visible to travelers approaching from various angles. This meticulous attention to detail ensured that no one would be confused about directions. The artisans would often consult their maps, measuring distances and angles with precision. The signs served not only as directions, but as friendly reminders of the city's landmarks. They would often feature familiar symbols, such as a simple depiction of the Colosseum or the Forum. This familiarity provided comfort to travelers, a warm welcome into the bustling life of Rome. Ah, as the sun set, the artisans would gather their tools, packing them neatly into their carts. They would take one last look at the signs they had erected, feeling a sense of calm wash over them. The signs would guide countless individuals, providing clarity in a world that often felt overwhelming. Back at their workshop, the artisans would clean their tools, each action performed with a gentle rhythm. They would wash the brushes in warm water, feeling the soft bristles between their fingers, releasing the last remnants of paint. The chisels would be wiped down with oil, ensuring they remained in pristine condition for future use. As they settled down for the evening, they would recount the day's tasks. They would speak softly about the challenges they faced, the joy of seeing their signs come to life, and the satisfaction of contributing to their beloved city. Each conversation was a thread in the fabric of their shared experience, weaving a sense of community and purpose. In the tranquility of the workshop, they would settle into their chairs, allowing the day's work to wash over them like a gentle tide. They understood that the world outside was ever-changing, but their contributions would remain steadfast, guiding and comforting those who sought direction. Little by little, they would drift into a restful state, their hearts beating softly in time with the pulse of Rome. Wow! As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft golden hue over the city, the artisans would begin preparing for the following day's work. Each morning, they would rise early to ensure they had ample time to complete the tasks at hand. The workshop, a cozy space filled with the scent of wood and paint, would slowly wake with them. The first order of business was to gather the necessary tools. Each artisan had a designated spot for their equipment, a practice that ensured efficiency and organization. They would retrieve their chisels, each one carefully sharpened to a fine edge, glinting softly in the morning light. The chisels varied in size. Some were delicate, designed for intricate details, while others were robust, meant for the larger strokes of their craft. Next, they would select the mallets. The mallets, made of polished wood, felt warm and comforting in their hands. Each strike would resonate with a satisfying thud as they began to carve messages into the wooden signs. The artisans understood the importance of each letter, every curve and line contributing to the clarity of the directions they were tasked to create. As they prepared, they would discuss the measurements for each sign. The standard size for a directional sign was typically around 2 feet wide and 1 foot tall. They would measure out the dimensions with a simple measuring tape, the soft sound of the metal retracting filling the workshop. They knew the importance of precision. A sign that was too large or too small could easily confuse a traveler. Once the wood was cut and prepared, the artisans would gather their paints. They favored natural pigments, each hue derived from the earth. The deep reds, vibrant yellows, and calming blues were carefully mixed with water to achieve the desired consistency. They would test the paints on scraps of wood, ensuring the colors would remain rich and visible in the changing light of day. After preparing the paints, they would begin the actual painting. Each stroke was executed with care, the smooth bristles of the brushes gliding over the surface of the wood. They would take their time, applying layer after layer, allowing each coat to dry before proceeding. This meticulous process could take several hours, but they found a rhythm in the repetition. They would often remind one another to stay patient, for patience was an essential virtue in their craft. As they painted, they would discuss the placement of the signs. The artisans knew that the location was just as crucial as the message. If a sign pointed to a nearby tavern or a public bath, it needed to be positioned at an angle that was easy for passers-by to see. Once the signs were completed, they would move on to the approval process. This stage was perhaps the most painstaking. Each completed sign would be taken to a designated official in the city, a man responsible for ensuring that all public signage adhered to the city regulations. The artisans would enter the cool stone building, the walls echoing with the soft sounds of their footsteps. They would present their signs to the official, who would inspect each one with careful scrutiny. He would measure the dimensions again, ensuring that every detail was as it should be. This process could take hours, sometimes even a full day, as the official noted down any corrections or changes needed. If a sign was approved, it would receive a small stamp, a mark that validated its place in the bustling streets of Rome. This stamp was a simple, circular design, embossed with the insignia of the city. The artisans would feel a sense of relief wash over them with each stamp. It was their ticket to contributing to the city's navigational clarity. Should there be any issues, the artisans would take the feedback with grace. They would return to their workshop, armed with new information. The art of Signage was a delicate balance of creativity and adherence to the established norms. Each comment from the official was an opportunity for growth, a chance to refine their work. Once all approvals were secured, they would prepare for installation. This part of the process involved more tools, spades for digging, ropes for lifting, and sturdy wooden posts for mounting the signs. They would gather these items, laying them out methodically in preparation for the day ahead. On the day of installation, the artisans would rise even earlier, the dawn light brushing against their faces. They would gather at the chosen locations, their arms filled with tools and signs. With gentle laughter and soft conversations, they would discuss their plan. Each member had a designated role. One would dig the holes for the posts, while others would carefully position the signs. The act of digging was rhythmic, the sound of the spade slicing through the earth creating a peaceful backdrop. They would take turns, their movements synchronized, as they worked together to anchor the signs firmly into place. The posts would stand tall, sturdy against the test of time, each sign a beacon of guidance for the weary traveler. Once the posts were secured, they would step back, admiring their handiwork. The signs stood proudly, painted letters glistening in the soft morning light. They would take a moment to breathe, to appreciate the quiet stillness surrounding them. Little by little, satisfaction would fill their hearts as they realized their work would aid countless individuals seeking direction. After securing the signs, they would carefully store any unused materials back in the workshop. Brushes would be rinsed out, tools would be cleaned, and paint tubes would be capped. Each action was performed with a sense of calm purpose, an acknowledgement of the day's accomplishments. As the sun began to set once again, the artisans would gather in their workshop, reflecting softly on their day. They would speak of the signs they had installed, the laughter shared, and the satisfaction of knowing they had made a difference. In the gentle glow of the dying light, they would settle into their chairs, their bodies relaxing as they prepared to drift into a peaceful slumber, secure in their contributions to the ever-evolving tapestry of their beloved Rome. Yea! As the artisans settled into their chairs, the soft glow of the workshop cast a gentle light upon their surroundings. They would take a moment to breathe deeply, allowing the stillness to envelop them. Each artisan, having completed the day's tasks, would reflect on the tools and materials that had been essential to their craft. The well-worn brushes, with bristles slightly frayed from countless strokes, rested quietly in a jar of water, their colors still vivid from the day's work. The jars, filled with various shades of paint, would be carefully arranged on a shelf. Each color had its own place, organized by hue and tone. The artisans took pride in this order, knowing that a well-organized workspace fostered creativity. The vibrant reds, soothing greens, and deep blues awaited their next application, always ready to contribute to the next sign's message. As they prepared for the next day, they would take stock of their supplies. Each tube of paint bore a small label indicating its price, often noted in sesterces, the currency of the time. A tube of ochre, for example, might cost about 5 sesterces, while a rich ultramarine could reach as high as 20. The artisans would discuss the need to be mindful of their budget, ensuring they could acquire the necessary materials without straining their resources. The discussion of prices would flow into a conversation about the measurements required for each sign. The standard size for a directional marker was approximately 3 feet wide and 2 feet high. They would measure each piece of wood or stone with a simple carpenter's square, ensuring that every angle was precise. A slight imperfection could lead to confusion among travelers. Ensuring clarity was paramount to their mission. Once the measurements were confirmed, they would transfer their designs onto parchment, using charcoal to sketch each letter. The artisans would take their time during this process, ensuring that the letters were both legible and aesthetically pleasing. With careful strokes, they would create arrows pointing in the right direction, following the established etiquette for signage. An arrow would indicate a turn, while a simple vertical line might denote a straight path. Anew. As they prepared to create their signs, the artisans would gather their tools. Each tool was essential for a specific task. A chisel for engraving, a brush for painting, and a mallet for securing the posts into the ground. They would lay out each tool on a smooth surface, ensuring that everything was within easy reach. The act of arranging tools was meditative, a ritual that reinforced their commitment to clarity. The artisans would then select the wood from their stockpile. Each piece had been carefully chosen for its durability and ease of carving. A sturdy oak might be preferred for its resilience, while a lighter pine could be selected for ease of transport. As they worked with the wood, they would feel the grain beneath their fingers, appreciating the natural beauty of the material. Equally important was the scheduling of their work. Each sign required a dedicated block of time for completion, often estimated to take half a day or more, depending on complexity. They would gather each morning at the first light of dawn, allowing the sun to illuminate their workspace, and they would find comfort in the routine. As they settled into their rhythm, the artisans would often pause to share stories of the signs that had come before. Tales of how a simple directional marker had helped a lost traveler find their way home. These stories served as a gentle reminder of the importance of their work. It was not merely about placing wood in the ground. It was about creating connections, fostering community, and aiding those who journeyed through their beloved city. Now, in the evenings, when the day's labor was complete, the artisans would reflect on their achievements. They would sit together, sipping water from clay cups, sharing soft laughter and warm camaraderie. Each artisan would articulate their hopes for the signs they had crafted, each one a thread in the fabric of their shared experience. Little by little, the artisans would discuss the logistics of transporting the signs to their designated locations. They would decide whether to carry them by hand or utilize a small cart, depending on the distance. If the location was nearby, the artisans would prefer to walk, taking in the sights and sounds of Rome along the way. If the journey was longer, they would carefully load the signs onto the cart, ensuring they were secure and protected from any potential damage. Hooray! Their conversations would drift towards the approval procedures, those necessary steps to ensure that each sign met the standards set by the local authorities. They would discuss the forms that needed to be filled out, the signatures required, and the meetings scheduled with officials. It was a tedious process, yet they approached it with patience and diligence. The artisans understood that approval was crucial. They wanted to ensure that their signs would not only stand tall, but also be recognized as legitimate markers of direction. So, they would prepare meticulously, gathering all necessary documents and ensuring that each detail was correct. In this way, their evenings would blend into nights, and the cycle would begin anew. Each day brought a sense of purpose, each task a step toward contributing to the greater good of the community. They were guardians of guidance, keepers of the road, and this knowledge brought them a soothing sense of fulfillment. Oh, as they settled into their evening routines, the artisans would dim the lights in their workshop, allowing the shadows to dance gently across the walls. They would take a moment to breathe deeply, feeling the weight of the day slowly lift away. Little by little, they would drift into the reassuring embrace of sleep, knowing that their labor would guide others through the winding streets of Rome. Each day held the promise of new challenges, new signs to create, and new stories to share. And so, with each breath, the artisans embraced the calm, allowing it to wrap around them like a warm blanket as they prepared for the night ahead. Hey. As the artisans prepared for the day ahead, they would rise early, just as the sun cast a soft glow over the rooftops of Rome. They would gather their tools, each item carefully chosen to fulfill a specific purpose. Among these tools were chisels of various sizes, each one honed to perfection, glimmering faintly in the morning light. The artisans would take a moment to inspect each chisel, feeling the cool metal against their palms as they prepared for the delicate work of engraving. With a gentle breath, they would wrap the handles of their chisels with strips of soft leather, ensuring comfort during the long hours spent shaping stone. They understood that even the slightest discomfort could distract from their artistry. They would then lay out their other tools, wooden mallets used to strike the chisels with precision, and small brushes to clean away the dust that would accumulate as they worked. Next, they would turn their attention to the materials at hand. The stone they used for the signs was chosen carefully, each slab a testament to the earth's solidity. Marble was often preferred for its elegance and durability, though limestone was also used for less prominent markers. Each piece would be measured meticulously, ensuring that every dimension was precise. The artisans would take their measuring tapes, delicate yet sturdy, unfurling them slowly along the stone. The sound of the tape's gentle metal clinking would fill the quiet workshop. One, or two, or three. As they measured, they would whisper the dimensions to themselves, repeating each figure softly. 2 feet wide, 3 feet tall. This repetition would calm their minds, allowing them to focus on the task ahead. For each sign, the artisans aimed for clarity, ensuring that the lettering would be large enough to be seen from a distance, yet proportionate to the stone itself. Once the measurements were confirmed, the artisans would set about sketching the design of the sign upon the stone. They would use charcoal, which glided smoothly against the surface, allowing for easy corrections. This part of the process required patience and a steady hand. Each letter would be drawn with care, ensuring that the shapes were both aesthetically pleasing and easy to read. The artisans understood the importance of consistency in their work. They would often refer to a handbook, a well-worn tome filled with illustrations of ancient scripts and their proper forms. This book was their guide, a soothing presence that reassured them of their skills and knowledge. They would spend moments thumbing through its pages, tracing the delicate lines with their fingers before returning to their sketches. With the design complete, the artisans would mark the stone for engraving. Using a fine-pointed tool, they would gently outline the letters, creating a delicate impression on the stone's surface. This initial step was done with the utmost care, as any mistake could lead to frustration and wasted effort. Each line drawn was a promise of clarity to the travelers who would one day read the signs. Once satisfied with the outline, the artisans would begin the engraving process. They would take their chisels and, with a soft yet deliberate motion, start to carve into the stone. The rhythmic tapping of the mallet against the chisel would create a soft music, echoing throughout the workshop. With every strike, they would immerse themselves deeper into their task, losing track of time as the morning hours passed gently by. As they engraved, the artisans would maintain a steady pace, allowing for breaks to prevent strain. They would pause every so often, wiping their brow and taking a deep breath. The air would be filled with the fine dust of stone, a reminder of their labor and dedication. They would take a moment to reflect on the purpose of their work, knowing that these signs would guide travelers safely through the bustling city. After several hours, with the sun now high in the sky, the artisans would examine their work closely. The letters, now defined and deep within the stone, would shimmer slightly, catching the light of the sun. Each curve and angle was a testament to their skill. They would run their fingers over the engraving, feeling the smooth contours as they took in the fruits of their labor. When the engraving was complete, the artisans would move on to the next stage, the finishing touches. They would prepare a mixture of water and fine powder, creating a paste that would be applied to the letters. This paste, once dried, would enhance the visibility of the engraved words, ensuring that they stood out against the stone. They would take a small brush, dipping it gently into the mixture, and then carefully apply it to the letters, working slowly and methodically. No. Sure. As they worked, they would often find themselves lost in thought, contemplating the meanings of the words they were inscribing. No left turn at the Colosseum, or straight ahead to the Forum. Each phrase carried weight, guiding the daily lives of countless citizens and travelers. Once the paste had dried, the artisans would step back and admire their work. They understood that the sign was not just a marker. It was a part of the city's character, a silent witness to the comings and goings of life in Rome. They would take a moment to breathe deeply, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over them. Before long, their task would be nearing its end, but there was still one last step to complete. They would carefully transport the newly crafted signs to their designated locations. This part of the day required not only physical labor, but also attention to detail. Each sign needed to be placed at the correct angle, ensuring maximum visibility for those who would rely on them. As twilight approached, casting a soft glow across the streets, the artisans would gather their tools, packing them away with gentle care. They would reflect on the day, feeling the satisfaction of a job well done. They had created something lasting, something that would guide others in their journeys. Slowly and gently, they would return to their homes, their minds filled with the rhythms of their work. The cycle of creation and guidance continued, a soothing pulse in the ever-busy heart of Rome. Each day they would rise again, ready to craft the next sign, preparing to bring clarity to the winding streets that crisscrossed their beloved city. And so, the artisans rested, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new signs, and new stories to share. Ah, in vegan, ini, ideni waya. As dawn broke over the city, the artisans awoke from their slumber, stretching gently, feeling the warmth of the sun on their faces. The day began with a simple ritual, brewing a modest pot of herbal tea. This soothing drink was a cherished part of their morning, offering a moment of calm before the day's endeavors commenced. The artisans would sit in their small workshop, sipping slowly, allowing the flavors to infuse their minds with clarity. Aye. With a sense of purpose, they would gather their essential tools. Each artisan had a dedicated set of chisels, crafted from hardened steel, each one carefully maintained. The chisels varied in size and shape, designed for different aspects of their work. The smallest chisels allowed for intricate details, while larger ones were used for broader strokes. The artisans would lay them out on a soft cloth, ensuring that each tool was clean and ready for use. Next came the selection of the materials. The artisans would choose blocks of durable stone, often sourced from nearby quarries. These stones were typically limestone or travertine, both favored for their workability and longevity. They would measure each block carefully, using a wooden measuring stick, which had been notched in increments. A typical block would measure about 2 feet long, 1 foot wide, and 6 inches thick. A comfortable size for handling, yet substantial enough to withstand the test of time. See? Once the stone was selected and measured, the artisans would begin the process of marking out the design. Using a charcoal stick, they would draw the letters and symbols that would represent the directions. The letters were drawn with meticulous precision, ensuring uniformity in size. Each letter would stand approximately 6 inches tall, broad enough to be easily read from a distance. The artisans would often hum softly as they worked, a calming rhythm that filled the workshop with a serene ambiance. With the design prepared, the artisans would then set to work with their chisels. Gently, they would strike the stone, removing small chips with each controlled motion. This process required patience, as they would take the time to ensure that each letter was deep enough to catch the eye of travelers. The sound of metal on stone echoed softly in the workshop, a rhythmic tapping that became almost meditative. Slowly and gently, they would carve out the shapes, focusing their minds on the task at hand. In Anessa, Sire, Wazi, Hadas. After several hours of dedicated work, the artisans would pause to examine their progress. They knew that a well-crafted sign was not only functional, but also aesthetically pleasing. They would step back, allowing their eyes to adjust to the overall composition, ensuring that the letters were both clear and harmonious. This moment of reflection was crucial, as it allowed them to appreciate the balance of their creation. Once satisfied, they would begin the next phase of their work, the finishing touches. This involved smoothing the edges of the letters with finer chisels, ensuring that no sharp edges remained. The artisans took pride in their attention to detail. They would often say that the beauty of their work lay in the small things, in the soft curves of a letter or the gentle tapering of a stroke. When the signs were finally complete, the artisans would move to the next step, preparing the surface for painting. They would mix natural pigments with a binding agent, often made from egg whites or honey, creating a vibrant blend that would adhere well to the stone. The colors selected were typically muted, blending harmoniously with the earthy tones of the limestone. With care, they would apply the paint to the carved letters, using soft brushes made from animal hair. These brushes allowed for delicate application, ensuring that the color filled every crevice of the carving. The artisans moved with a gentle rhythm, repeating strokes in a soothing manner as they painted. Each sign would take several layers of paint to achieve the desired vibrancy, requiring patience and careful observation. While the paint dried, the artisans would take a moment to organize their workshop. They believed that a tidy space fostered clarity of thought. They would put away their tools, returning each chisel to its designated spot, ensuring that nothing was left out of place. The storage of their materials was equally meticulous. The stones were stacked in a corner, sorted by size and type, while the paints were stored in small clay jars, labeled clearly. This organization was not only practical, but also a reflection of their dedication to their craft. Amdante, and Xiaoyao, Heri, and Hichikabisho, why, more. As the afternoon sun began to cast long shadows, the artisans would prepare themselves for the final task, transporting the signs to their new homes. They would gather the completed signs, carefully wrapping each one in soft cloths to prevent any damage during the journey. This process was done with great care. After all, the signs represented their hard work and commitment to the community. The journey itself was a rhythmic routine. They would choose a sturdy cart, its wooden wheels creaking softly as they loaded the signs. The artisans would then set off, making their way along the cobbled streets of Rome. The sounds of the city enveloped them, the distant chatter of townsfolk, the gentle clatter of hooves on stone, the occasional rustle of leaves. As they traveled, they would stop occasionally, consulting their carefully prepared maps. These maps were not merely navigational tools. They were detailed records of where each sign was to be placed. Each mark on the map represented a location where guidance was needed, where clarity would be provided through their work. They would check each location, ensuring that the signs would be positioned for maximum visibility. Upon arriving at their destination, the artisans would unload the signs with care, setting them aside momentarily. They would take a moment to survey the area, observing the flow of foot and cart traffic. This was an important part of their process, as understanding the space allowed them to choose the best placement for each sign. Once they were satisfied with their assessments, they would begin the process of installation. Each sign was anchored into the ground with sturdy wooden posts, chosen for their durability. They would dig shallow holes, ensuring the signs were placed at a height that would be easily seen by approaching travelers. The artisans worked together, communicating softly as they positioned each sign, ensuring it stood straight and proud. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden hue across the landscape, the artisans would step back to admire their work. Each sign stood as a testament to their dedication, guiding the way for others. They felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that they had contributed to the lives of those who would navigate the streets of Rome. And in the cool evening air, they would gather their tools and prepare to return to their workshop. The journey home was filled with a quiet satisfaction, a gentle reminder of the impact of their labor. They would walk slowly, reflecting on the day's endeavors, feeling the soft embrace of the night settling around them. Each step was a reminder of their purpose, their contribution to the fabric of their community. And so, and so, they returned home, their minds lulled by the rhythm of the day's work. The cycle continued, like the steady beat of a heart as they prepared for another day of crafting signs, bringing clarity to the winding streets of their beloved city. Mice. In the days that followed, the artisans would settle back into their routines. Each morning began with the soft sound of the workshop door creaking open, a gentle invitation to the day ahead. The first task was always to gather the necessary materials. They would choose the finest local stone, smooth and strong, with a rich, earthy tone. Each piece was selected with care, as it would later bear the messages meant for the travelers. The artisans would measure the stones, each one precisely cut to a height of about 3 feet. This height was deemed optimal for visibility, allowing travelers on horseback or in carts to see the signs from a distance. Little by little, they would ensure that every sign would be exactly the same, creating a uniformity that was both pleasing and practical. Once the stones were prepared, it was time to shape them. The artisans would reach for their chisels, tools worn smooth from years of use. Each chisel had its own purpose. Some were for deep grooves, while others were for delicate lines. They would work in harmony, the soft tapping of metal on stone forming a soothing rhythm. The sounds of creation filled the air, mingling with the gentle rustle of leaves outside the workshop. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, they would pause to examine their progress. Each letter, carved into the stone, was a testament to their skill. Each curve and line meticulously formed. The artisans took pride in their work, knowing that clarity was essential for those who would rely on these signs for direction. After the letters were carved, the artisans would gather around a large wooden table where they would mix a pigment made from natural minerals. The colors were chosen with care, favoring muted tones that would blend with the environment yet remain legible. They would mix the pigment into a smooth paste, taking their time to ensure the consistency was just right. With brushes in hand, they would gently apply the paint to the carved letters, allowing it to settle into the grooves. This process required patience, as they would not rush. Each stroke was deliberate and calming, a meditative act that brought a sense of tranquility. They would step back occasionally, admiring the deep hues against the stone, feeling satisfied with the natural beauty unfolding before them. Once the paint dried, the artisans would gather the signs and prepare them for placement. They would transport them carefully, ensuring that each sign remained intact. For this, they employed sturdy wooden carts, designed for stability and ease of movement. The wheels creaked softly as they rolled along the cobblestone streets, the gentle sound blending with the ambient noises of the bustling city. As they approached the designated sites, they would begin the next phase of their labor. Each sign required a precise location. The artisans consulted the city's carefully crafted maps, which detailed the streets and landmarks in great detail. They would discuss amongst themselves, voices low and calm, as they debated the best positions for visibility and clarity. Once a consensus was reached, they would dig shallow holes to set the signs firmly in place. The digging was done with simple spades, the process slow and methodical. Each artisan took turns, working in a rhythmic manner, the sound of metal against earth, accompanied by the soft whispers of encouragement. The earth was cool and damp, a reminder of the life that thrived beneath the surface. Now me. With each sign securely placed, they would step back and admire their work, ensuring that everything was aligned properly. The signs not only guided travelers but also contributed to the overall aesthetic of the city. They stood proudly, each one a small monument to the artisan's dedication. As the day wore on, The artisans would often share a simple meal together, a quiet moment of camaraderie. They would gather around a wooden table, sharing bread and cheese, perhaps a few olives. The conversation flowed softly about the signs they had crafted, the streets they had transformed, and the people they had guided. After their meal, they would return to the workshop to clean their tools. A ritual that required methodical attention. They would wash the chisels and brushes in a basin filled with water, taking care to remove any remnants of paint or stone dust. The water would ripple softly, its gentle splashes echoing in the quiet sanctuary of the workshop. Once everything was cleaned and put away, they would store the freshly painted signs under protective coverings. This ensured that the colors remained vibrant and the stones were kept safe from the elements. Each sign was treated with respect, as it would soon serve a vital purpose. Oh, why? Oh, see. I. Every week, the artisans would meet with city officials to discuss new projects and review the placement of existing signage. These meetings, held in a calm chamber filled with soft light, were a time for reflection. The officials would gather around a large wooden table, maps unfurled before them, guiding discussions with a touch of reverence. The artisans would present their work, explaining the thought process behind each decision. They would highlight the importance of clear directions, speaking softly about the ways in which their signs could ease the burdens of travel. The officials, too, listened intently, acknowledging the significance of the artisans' contributions. In these meetings, a gentle exchange of ideas unfolded, each party valuing the other's insights. The discussions were never hurried. They unfolded like a soft blanket, wrapping everyone in a sense of purpose and unity. As new projects were approved, the artisans would leave the meeting with renewed motivation. They would return to their workshop, hearts light and minds clear. The anticipation of future signs filled the air, a comforting promise of the work yet to come. Hallelujah. Each sign they crafted was a small part of a larger tapestry, connecting the lives of countless travelers. Little by little, they would weave their influence into the everyday journeys of the people of Rome. The artisans understood that their labor was not merely a task, but a means of fostering community and shared experience. In the evenings, as the sun dipped below the horizon, they would often gather to celebrate their achievements. In the soft glow of candlelight, they would share stories of the day, laughing gently as they recounted the small triumphs and challenges encountered. These moments of connection brought warmth to their hearts, reinforcing the bonds formed through shared labor. They would recount tales of the travelers who sought their guidance, each story a reminder of their purpose. Gansai. As sleep began to beckon, they would wrap themselves in cozy blankets, feeling the soothing embrace of the night. The signs they had crafted stood watch over the city, a silent promise of safety and direction. The artisans would close their eyes, letting the rhythm of their daily lives lull them into a peaceful slumber, dreaming of the streets they had transformed and the journeys they had inspired. As the artisans of Rome settled into their routines, they found solace in the repetition of their tasks. Each day began at the break of dawn, when the soft light of the sun would filter through the narrow streets. They would gather their tools, simple yet essential implements of their trade. Among them were chisels, hammers, and brushes, each worn from use, each carrying the weight of countless inscriptions. Tau. The chisels made of iron were precisely shaped, their edges sharp but not jagged, allowing for smooth carving into stone. The artisans would select the appropriate size depending on the scale of the sign they were creating. For larger signs, they would reach for the heftier chisels, while smaller signs required more delicate tools, allowing for intricate details. With each strike of the hammer, a rhythmic sound echoed through the workshop, a gentle percussion marking the passage of time. The hammer itself was crafted from a solid piece of wood, its handle polished smooth from years of handling. Each blow was calculated, each movement deliberate. They would take a moment to breathe deeply, inhaling the earthy scent of the stone dust that floated in the air. Once the basic shape of the sign was carved, the artisans turned their attention to the paint. They kept a range of colors stored in small clay pots, each labeled with the name of the pigment. The deep reds and bright yellows were particularly favored, as they stood out against the gray stone. The paints were made from natural substances, ground finely to create a smooth paste. The artisans would mix the pigments with water, ensuring the right consistency, neither too thick nor too thin. They needed the paint to adhere well to the stone, and so they would test a small amount on a scrap piece first, watching carefully as it dried. With the paint ready, they would begin the process of application. Using soft brushes made from animal hair, they would dip the bristles into the pigment, taking care to remove any excess. The strokes would be gentle, spreading the paint slowly across the carved letters. The artisans took pride in this methodical process, feeling a sense of peace as the colors took shape. Once the sign was painted, it was time for drying. The artisans would place the finished signs on wooden racks, allowing them to rest in the gentle warmth of the sun. This drying process was essential, as it ensured the longevity of the paint. They would position the signs carefully, ensuring that they did not touch each other, preventing any smudging. As they worked, they would engage in quiet conversation, discussing the signs they had completed or the designs they wished to try next. After a few hours, the signs would be checked for quality. The artisans would inspect each piece closely, running their fingers over the raised letters, feeling the texture of the stone beneath. Any imperfections would be addressed with a keen eye, as they understood the importance of clarity in their work. A sign that was difficult to read could lead to confusion, and confusion was something they wished to avoid. If a sign required touch-ups, they would carefully add more paint, ensuring that the colors matched seamlessly. This required a steady hand and a patient spirit. They knew that the signs would soon be placed in busy intersections, guiding travelers. Once all signs were deemed satisfactory, they would begin the next phase of their work, the approval process. This involved submitting their designs to the local authorities, who were responsible for ensuring that the signs complied with regulations. The artisans carefully prepared their submission, including sketches and specifications. They would list the dimensions of each sign, detailing height, width, and the materials used. At the designated office, they would present their work formally, placing their designs on a large wooden table. The officials, often stern but fair, would examine each submission with diligence. They would check that the colors adhered to the established guidelines and that the lettering was appropriately sized for visibility. The artisans waited patiently, understanding that approval could take time. They used this interval to discuss ideas with fellow artisans who waited alongside them. Conversations flowed softly, filled with insights and suggestions as they envisioned future projects. Once the approval was granted, a sense of relief washed over them. They would receive a small stamp of approval, an official mark indicating that their work met the necessary standards. This stamp was much more than a mere formality. It was a recognition of their craftsmanship and dedication. And you, with their signs approved, they would prepare for installation. Each sign was to be placed in a specific location, determined by the city planners. The artisans would gather their tools once more, ready for the task ahead. They would load the signs onto sturdy carts, securing them with ropes to prevent any shifting during transport. The carts creaked gently as they rolled through the streets, the sound of wooden wheels on cobblestones echoing softly in the ambient air. Upon arrival at the installation site, they would begin the process of placing the signs. This required digging small holes in the ground, where the bases of the signs would be secured. The digging tools were simple spades, sharp enough to cut through the earth, but not so heavy as to cause fatigue. They would work together, sharing the labor, each person understanding their role in this shared effort. And once the holes were dug to the proper depth, typically around a foot deep, they would carefully position the signs. Each sign was aligned meticulously, ensuring that it stood straight and true. They would fill the holes with soil, packing it tightly around the base of the signs. This would provide stability, allowing them to withstand the elements and the passage of time. After the installation was complete, the artisans would step back, admiring their work. The signs stood tall, vibrant against the backdrop of the Roman landscape. They would take a moment to breathe deeply, feeling a sense of fulfillment wash over them. The signs were not merely objects. They represented the culmination of their efforts, the fruits of their labor. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow across the city, they would gather their tools once more. They would make their way back to their workshop, the sounds of the city beginning to soften. The day's work had come to an end, but the signs would continue to guide travelers long into the night. Little by little, they would watch over the streets, a quiet assurance amidst the bustling lives of those who passed by. In the comforting embrace of night, the artisans returned home, their hearts light and their minds at ease. They would settle into their evening routines, finding rest in the rhythmic cadence of their lives. Each sign they had crafted was a promise of direction, safety, and a connection to the past. And as they drifted into sleep, they could rest assured that their work would guide many more journeys to come. As the artisans wound their way back through the cobbled streets of Rome, they carried with them the memories of the day, the gentle clinks of their tools, the feel of the heavy stones, and the aromatic dust that danced in the air. Each step was deliberate, measured, as they navigated the familiar paths that led to their workshop. They knew the streets well, much like they knew the craft of creating signs, each turn a reminder of their purpose. Whoa, highware, einchi, sahinenwa. Upon entering the workshop, they would store their tools meticulously. Hammers, chisels, and brushes were placed in their designated spots. The wooden benches, scarred from years of labor, held the stories of countless signs. The artisans took care to clean their tools, wiping off the dust and debris with a soft cloth, a ritual that signified the end of the day's work. The tools were then lined up neatly on the shelves, each one ready for the next day's tasks. Each chisel, each hammer held the weight of responsibility. They understood the importance of maintaining their materials. These tools were not just instruments. They were extensions of their skill and dedication. The artisans would often discuss the ideal weight of a hammer, the perfect grip of a chisel, how these seemingly trivial details could affect the outcome of their craftsmanship. Next, they would prepare the storage area for the newly created signs. Carefully, they would place the signs on wooden pallets, ensuring that they were spaced evenly apart. Each sign measured approximately 1 meter in height and half a meter in width, the dimensions carefully calculated to be visible from a distance, but not overwhelming to the eye. The artisans took pride in these measurements, knowing that they adhered to the standards set forth by the Roman authorities. The storage area itself was a cozy nook, lined with shelves filled with previously completed signs, and each sign was labeled with its intended location. The artisans had developed a system, a simple yet effective method for cataloging their work. They used parchment, inscribing the names of streets, landmarks, and key directions with delicate care. In this controlled space, they would sometimes pause to reminisce about their favorite signs. Perhaps it was the one that directed travelers to the thermal baths, a sign adorned with elegant motifs. Or maybe it was a sign that pointed towards the Forum, where the heart of Roman life thrummed with energy. Every sign had its own story, its own significance, and the artisans respected that deeply. While the artisans also maintained a meticulous ledger, noting each sign's production date, intended destination, and any special features. This ledger was a reflection of their work ethics, and a testament to their meticulous nature. Often, they would gather around a table, flipping through its pages, recalling the details of each sign. Discussions swirling about the aesthetics and practicality. They understood that the approval process for each sign was as important as the crafting itself. Each week, they would prepare a selection of signs to present to the local magistrate. It was a formal procedure, one that required them to follow a precise schedule. They marked their calendars carefully, noting the day of the week when they would present their work. They would arrive early, bringing their best creations, ensuring that each sign was polished and well represented. The magistrate office was an imposing structure, a place where decisions were made with authority. The artisans would walk in with a sense of calm, each carrying a bundle of signs wrapped in linen cloth. They would lay the signs out on a large wooden table, presenting them one by one, explaining each sign's purpose and design. The approval process was methodical and required patience. The magistrate would examine each sign closely, taking notes, and occasionally offering constructive feedback. The artisans had learned to listen carefully, to absorb the suggestions provided. They would often leave the meeting with a renewed sense of purpose, eager to return to their workshop and refine their designs based on the magistrate's words. Once the signs were approved, the artisans would receive a formal notification. It was a simple piece of parchment, marked with the official seal. This notification was a source of pride. It confirmed that their signs would soon be erected, guiding the way for weary travelers and locals alike. Each day, the artisans would rise early, before the sun cast its first light over the rooftops. They would gather in the workshop, the air still cool and crisp. The first light of dawn would filter through the windows, illuminating the space in a soft glow. They would start with the gentle sounds of grinding pigments, preparing the colors that would adorn their signs. The hues were chosen with care, each color having a specific meaning and purpose. Bright white for clarity, deep green for nature, and a rich brown for stability. Each pigment was poured into small bowls, mixed with binding agents to create a paste, ready for use. It's you. The artisans would often share stories as they worked, their voices low and calm. They spoke of the history of the city, of the roads that had been trodden for centuries. They knew that their signs were part of a larger narrative, one that connected the past to the present. They felt a deep sense of responsibility to their craft, understanding that these signs would guide generations to come. With each brushstroke, They poured their dedication into the work. The signs would be painted with care, the letters formed with precision. They would take their time, ensuring that each sign was not just functional, but also a piece of art. The artisans often found solace in the rhythm of their brushes gliding across the surfaces, a soothing dance of color and form. As the day unfolded, they would take breaks, sitting together in the workshop, sipping on simple herbal teas. The warmth of the tea would comfort them, a pause in their busy lives. They would share laughter and ideas, the atmosphere light despite the weight of their responsibilities. Each conversation was a thread woven into the fabric of their collaboration, a gentle reminder of their shared purpose. Already, the artisans understood the importance of logistics as well. They maintained a careful inventory of their materials, tracking the supply of wood, pigments, and tools. They would gather together to discuss their needs, calculating how much wood was required for the next batch of signs, how many pigments they had left, and when they might need to restock. Each decision was made collectively, ensuring that every artisan had a voice in the process. As evening approached, the workshop would fill with the soft glow of oil lamps. The artisans would gather one last time, reviewing their day's work. They might reflect on the signs that were to be erected the following day, discussing the placement and visibility. They would consider how the signs would be received by the public, imagining the travelers who would seek direction and reassurance. Ani. Finally, as the day came to a close, they would extinguish the lamps, the soft light fading into darkness. Each artisan would take a moment to breathe deeply, allowing the stillness of the night to envelop them. They would step outside, looking up at the stars, feeling a sense of peace wash over them. Little by little, they would make their way home, their minds content with the knowledge that their work would continue to guide others long after they had turned in for the night. In our exploration of the exceedingly unexciting history of Roman road signage approval procedures, we gently traversed the quiet corridors of bureaucracy. We examined how officials meticulously ensured that travelers were well informed. Little by little, we uncovered the soft intricacies of regulations, the soothing repetition of standardized signage, and the careful consideration given to directionality at significant landmarks, like the Colosseum. We reflected on the slow, methodical pace at which these decisions were made, creating a framework for safety and clarity in a bustling empire. As you settle back into your quiet room, imagine the soft hum of a peaceful night surrounding you, wrapping you in gentle comfort. Your body rests, relaxed and at ease, as the day drifts away. If you found solace in this exploration, consider liking, subscribing, or sharing your thoughts in the comments. Remember to turn on loop so this calming journey can continue to cradle you into restful sleep.